Hello and welcome to the Cubicle Liberation Podcast. I'm here with Joshua Fletcher to talk about thriving during the coronavirus pandemic. How you doing, Josh?
I'm good. Thankfully healthy. My family's healthy. I know a lot of people are going through a lot of things, and my heart goes out to them. But today we're going to talk about some ways to look at some things differently and keep your head kind of at least looking for good stuff and not just staring at bad and getting scared.
Yeah, and I'm fortunate enough to where my family is healthy, and I understand that some people have different situations, but the idea for this is to take you to the best position or an excellent, a much better position than you could be given when this is all done. So if you're just gonna sit around and watch Netflix all day, and then you're probably not gonna come out of this in a positive way. Now, it's not entirely true, but I'm just saying that there's things that you can certainly do to improve your situation during this period. And everybody's going to be in a different position. So I think we wanted to start by talking about the mindset, because I think that's kind of where everything starts from. And I wanted to point out, because I've heard a lot of different discussions about this, about sort of the being opportunistic right now versus taking advantage versus something like price gouging. And some people talk about how, I shouldn't be selling, I should be giving away free because people are, struggling. I don't agree with that. I don't think that, because I think if everybody gave away everything for free, then the economy is just going to crash even more. So you got to keep selling. There are people out there buying, and that is important. That doesn't mean you can't take considerations, maybe do longer payment plans. But you just can't do the same thing. You can't sell something, give away something for free that's valuable. It's bad to your previous customers. It's just, there's a lot of bad in it. Again, that doesn't mean you don't take into consideration, but also it doesn't, and you can kind of take advantage of the situation in some ways. Like you can invest in Zoom stock, because I think everybody's getting Zoom, right? That would be taking advantage. Not in like, there's kind of a negative connotation to that sometimes, not in like the negative way. So there's like price gouging, where it's like you go and buy all the toilet paper in your city and then you sell it online for 3x price. That is wrong and illegal, and so that would be bad. That's don't do that. Don't price gouge. Don't, if you have a scarce resource, don't jack up the prices 10 times. What do you think about this, Fletch?
Yeah, I think like the taking advantage has such a negative connotation. We've talked a lot about it. I try to reframe that, just change it a little bit, but it sounds totally different in building advantages, right? Really what we're doing is we're looking for opportunities and building advantages, right? That none of that feels bad for most people, right? There's an opportunity. I can build advantages here. Let me go do that. Price gouging, whole different matter. It, yeah. And obviously just again, like the connotation of it feels different. Building an advantage doesn't feel bad. And so I know people have this like internal dialogue in their head, like, oh, I'm taking advantage of people by charging them a fair price for something that they want. You're not, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at an opportunity and doing the thing that you normally do. And what David alluded to with just money, right? Unless you're transacting, like you'd have to kind of take a deep dive into economics, which I did, to understand how fundamentally true what David said is. If things are not being sold for money, the economy as you know it does not exist. There will not be money. There is not enough money in the world to pay back debt that exists. So that's a whole separate matter, but just know, like, unless you're out there spending money, transacting, buying things, selling things, this is not going to get back to anything like normal again.
Yeah.
And we're also going to talk about how it's not going to be the old normal as we move forward.
Right. I
Yeah.
mean, I think there's going to be some good stuff that comes out of this.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to talk about that. And I think being opportunistic, thinking about what are the opportunities available now that weren't there, or that are better now that weren't as good before. That is sort of the way that I'm trying to think about it. And I want you to try to think about it. Fletch mentioned, we were talking about how we think that there's some things that we think have changed fundamentally forever, like the mindset as a whole of society and a lot of people. Fletch, you gave a really good analogy here for this the mindset change.
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town in Missouri. I was around my grandparents, even great grandparents were alive while, I was young and remember. And the depression, living through the depression was something that had a lasting impact on them for the rest of their lives. And because I grew up in that kind of culture, so to speak, it impacted me. This is an event that is going to have impacts like that for everyone that's alive now, that's kind of the, at least above a certain age, to remember, oh, you know the school year got canceled in Arizona. Like, what's that going to mean? Like, there was no NCAA basketball championship. There's a lot of things that are just going to be like, oh, that was the year that everything was different. And that's going to last. That memory is going to last for almost all of us, right? In some way, one or two or many different things. People are going to lose businesses because of this. Other people are going to grow massive businesses because of this. And treating this as if it's the flu from that perspective is being naive, right? And it's not looking for opportunities and building advantages based on the magnitude of what's really happening right now worldwide. So, the
Yeah.
depression, I think, it impacted tons of people. This is going to have a similar magnitude of effects on
Yeah, I feel like
generations.
this one is, well, hopefully is not going to be as long lasting, but it's going to be more sudden than the depression. And that's without me having completely studied it. I know it went from the Roaring '20s to the depression pretty rapidly, but this feels like over a course of like a month, everything changed, and we're looking
Right.
at just in the U.S. alone having at least 100,000 deaths this year, which it's hard for people not to have that affected, not that have affect the psyche of the whole. And then there's other mindsets that are going to be changed forever. So, for example, businesses. There's probably a lot of businesses out there that were hesitant to try to set up like a work from home type of thing for their employees, who now, because they're forced to, and then they're probably going to figure out, some of them are going to not like it, and some of them are going to figure out, oh wow, actually this is great because you save money, you don't have to house them, they're doing it at home. The employees might like it because they don't have to go through rush hour, which has a whole lot of other effects. But then there's a lot of businesses that, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We'll talk about kind of like how businesses change, but I guess we're still in the mindset. So also the mindset of people trying to take care of them and their families. I think that's changed forever. Maybe people will, I guess a lot of the people who lived through the Depression, they were really cheap. My grandparents were as well. They just were really super or frugal. Maybe that will come out, especially if, the economy will get hit really hard by this. It's hard to say how it will be. And if it ends up getting really bad, then we might have something like that, especially if it takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years to recover, like the Depression. I think it was like a 15-year period.
Yeah, it was a much longer economic impact, right? And so I kind of look at what we're going through currently as, and I don't even want to speculate onto the, the illness side of this, right? But I don't know that much about it. I have some doctor friends that I've talked to, and everybody's seen, some news stories, no matter how much you've tried to avoid them. Um, but like looking at the economic side of this, it was very abrupt. We're already seeing some of the same types of programs, right, rolling out with the CARES Act, to kind of prop things up, right, stimulate economies, all of that type of thing, that like the CCC and the things after the Great Depression rolled out. Like, a little bit of a student of history, I like to kind of understand, where we've been. It only insofar as it can help me understand that what we're going through, while it's unprecedented in one way, it's not at all. It's this type of thing is going to happen again, like, just period. Whether it happens in our lifetime or in 5 years or in 50 years, it doesn't matter. There are going to be abrupt changes. And what a lot of people are like is like, I just want it to go back to normal. It's not. That it's going to go. Things are like, when David's talking about things are going to improve. Things are always changing, and things are based on the way they are currently right now. So the way they are right now, we're comparing it to the way it was. The thing that it's going to be like in 2 months down the road, we're going to compare it to now and the way it was before. And so I guess all I'm pointing at is, okay, so if the health issue with the COVID-19, illness, if that goes away, are people who are getting paid to work from home going to be that anxious to go back and get into rush hour and go back to an office where they may not really like the people that they're working with, and where they have to wake up earlier and get home later and therefore miss more time with their family if they like that? These are significant questions that this event has at least opened up in a lot of people's minds, especially if, hey, now you got to go back to work and your life, if money didn't become really tight for you during this time, are you really going to be that anxious to go back into that environment? And that's it. Framing this up with the cubicle liberation idea, you were forced to, right?
Yeah, forced
Okay,
cubicle
so
liberation.
David and I
People
called
not
it.
work.
David came up with the idea, but it certainly had nothing to do with the pandemic. But a lot of
I
people
predicted this
are yeah, he
18
did,
months
man. We
ago.
got Nostradamus too here,
I know.
reincarnate.
Well,
Yeah,
I mean, a couple of things that I want to point out there. So things might get worse, but eventually they will get better. So that's something that it's important for you to keep in your mind. People will go back to work now, but I do think there will be some things that are different. I think a really good way to go about looking for kind of having an opportunistic mindset is differentiating between asking yourself good questions and asking yourself not good questions. So a bad question is, can I do this? A good question is, how can I do this? So you want to set out to meet your goals. Don't ask if you can do it, because the act of questioning whether or not you can do it reduces the chances that you can do it. Even if it's like, how can I fly to Jupiter? Okay, obviously there's some extreme ridiculousness here, but if it is reasonably achievable at all, you increase your chances dramatically. You kind of put yourself on different pathways in your brain by doing, how can I? And so really brainstorming, how can I build this business that I can work from home? How can I build a business dot, dot, dot? How can I improve my financial situation? And then brainstorm that. Just actually sit down with like a pen and paper or a digital notepad and eliminate distractions and really just like try to brainstorm. I think that this is going to be really, really powerful. And you kind of can't spend too much time doing this. I mean, if that's all you did, then that's probably bad. You need some balance between, trying to implement some of these things. But I think that pretty much nobody does this too much. And this is really valuable because what you're doing is you're taking your brain and you're really utilizing it. And what's going to happen is these questions, you're going to brainstorm some stuff, and then you're going to be like doing dishes later or playing with your kids, and something's going to be bouncing around your brain, and then it's going to come to the forefront, and something that you're going to go, oh, that's something that's even better. And you're going to keep building on that. So you're going to, how can I build this certain type of business? And it's just going to keep building and building and building. And you're going to want to go do it because it's going to be exciting. It's going to take you forward into the future in a positive way. What do you think about that, Fletch?
yeah. Just to double down on what you said, is there's not really a way to do this too much. It's just simply not going to happen. You're going to think and to think and to think, and you're going to be like, I say think, using your brain properly. There's a bunch of different ways that people call thinking, and we need to use our brain properly. You'll get to a place where you start to see things so clearly that motivation will naturally flow from that, right? To actually do the thing. And so I also, balance is okay, but like, I really like looking at priorities. What you need to do is to get over the threshold with different activities. And if you're not over the threshold with seeing opportunities clearly and how to build them, then you're not over that threshold. Get over that threshold, and then there may be some thresholds you need to get over implementing that clarity. And okay, so now that's the thing. That's now the new priority. That's the new bottleneck, right? And that's kind of the shift of this framework of understanding really what's going on and representing it properly to ourselves. That can be quite helpful, because otherwise it's like, oh, I've spent enough hours working today, and I need to now spend some hours recreating today. And that might not be the case. Like, there's some reasonableness to it. Your brain just gets tired after a while. It's like, I'm not being effective. But I think too many people just set arbitrary, um, or they'll allocate like really arbitrary guidelines and structure to like a plan and a schedule.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I find that very unhelpful.
When it comes to planning a business or planning a work from home job or improving your life, thinking really doing a lot of positive thinking about what are some good priorities, what are some good goals, how can I go about even like really meta questions of how can I go about creating awesome goals for me, how can I go about, what are some processes for figuring out what are good goals, really dig as deep as you can and just follow question after question after question and then try to answer them, obviously. And I like what you said, Fletch, and I think I alluded to it before as well, which was that, you when you do it enough to where you get to a point where you're like, oh my God, I'm really excited to actually go try to implement these things, then you kind of have a natural inclination to go do it. And there's a lot of planning and that really gets you to go directly towards your goals, as opposed to just kind of meandering around and wasting time. But yeah, so definitely, I think that kind of asking positive questions. Um, Another thing I want to talk about, because I suspect this is going to be true for a lot of people, and I'm not judging people who are doing this, because I have my own version of this in some ways that I do sometimes from off and on, but I could be better about it. But just acknowledging that it is typically not going to improve your situation. It's going to make you feel better, what I'm about to talk about in the moment, but it's going to make you feel worse probably afterwards at some point. So basically, spending all your time Netflixing or Huluing or whatever, playing a video game the whole time, and basically versus what I would call personal development or building your business or working on things. I think that, again, it's fine. I'm not saying don't ever watch Netflix. So this is not like an extreme situation. But if you spend all day on binging Netflix for like the next 2 months, you're not gonna come out better. In fact, it's not gonna be good for your brain. It's just, there's a lot of bad things that are gonna come from it. But again, it's people in different situations. So I'm not saying that this is gonna be 100% true for everybody. Maybe some people, they already know where they're at. They're going to be totally fine, and they're really comfortable with who they are and where they're going to be in 2 months. And Netflixing for them is totally fine. But for me personally, I couldn't do that without coming out worse on the other end. And one of the best things that you can do is get training that can help you grow as a human being. What do you think about that, Fletch?
Yeah, I mean, I've begun a while ago to question, this concept. Well, I mean, I have a master's degree in recreation. Okay, so like I understand that concept and how central it is, when it's kind of done right. And there's a distinction within that kind of social psychology field, where being active with your recreation it provides very different stimulation and benefits than being passive, right? And so purely listening to something, purely watching something, um, is most often boring. And TV shows have kind of understood that, and they've understood how to do a narrative that'll get you leaning forward in your seat. And so you're actually more engaged with stuff. But, kind of from a standpoint of, Netflix or, slot machines, gambling, like these are pastimes designed to be addictive to people. We understand neurology and psychology well enough, neurosciences well enough to design things that are addictive, including potato chips and all these other types of things. We know how to hack the brain, so to speak. That's what all the brain hacking stuff is about. These things are designed to get our attention. And once we start down that rabbit hole, it's a very slippery slope. Once you start watching that first episode of Tiger King, you got to know how it ends. And I did it, right? So that's why I'm not like preaching about any of this. I'm just
I watched
helping
a little bit
people
of that.
understand. Yeah, I'm helping people understand some things that I know, some distinctions I know.
Yeah.
And, it's a guilty pleasure. It was fun. My wife and I watched it. We laughed. We were like, oh my God, we had a great time. But, if we'd have then gone to the next series and the next series and the next series together, we'd have both, after a while, and it's a very limited time doing that sort of thing, um, the drawbacks, the downside very quickly outweigh the benefits.
Yeah, and I think that you mentioned something before, which is priorities, and this is something that is something I always try to bring myself back to, in terms of, what should I really spend my time on? What is my priority in my life? If you really need to build your business, if you're just getting your business off the ground, or you're just new to it, maybe you're worried about your job, the long term of your job, and you want to build a business, then that could be a huge priority for you. If you, let's say, for you or me or somebody else who's maybe a little bit more developed business, where they've built a lot of it and don't need to they're not trying to just get enough speed to get off the ground. Maybe, spending time with your wife in something that you both enjoy, that you can connect with to some degree, is more valuable and more of a priority. I wouldn't want to do it all the time. There's kind of too much, just like the potato chips. I think a few are fine, but if you just spend all day eating potato chips, you're going to end up feeling sick. And so one of the things that you can do, I like how you differentiated active versus passive recreation. And even like active recreation, is still something that, unless that's kind of you need to have money to live in this world, right? And if that's something that doesn't make you money, ultimately you couldn't just do that. I think, again, unless you had all the money you needed and you were completely financially safe, then by all means do whatever you want. But if you have money to make and you're not sure about your long-term career, which I suspect a lot of people are in that situation, then I think one of the best things you can do is get out there and build your skills, build your understanding, build your knowledge base. And there's this concept, there's a couple different concepts that are closely related, called E versus E ratio, which is education versus entertainment, which I really like, because it's sort of like, okay, if your entertainment gets higher than your education, then that's kind of bad. From a moving yourself forward, if you've already made it, you've accomplished everything, I'm not sure why you're listening right now. I mean, I guess you can still listen, but
to see us, David, come on.
Yeah, that's true.
We're both education and entertainment.
Super, right, exactly. Super successful people tend to make this habit, and then they have trouble getting rid of it. So super successful people still keep this even after they've made millions or billions. Bill Gates still reads a ton of books. And there's another way of looking at this: tension relieving versus goal achieving. So again, you want more goal achieving behavior and less tension relieving behavior. Ultimately, to me, I tried to frame goal achieving as tension relieving, even though short term, a lot of times it doesn't. Like watching a show, you can relax. It's very tension relieving. You can just kind of forget about things and kind of focus on that. So that would be one of my biggest recommendations for you. Try to, if you find yourself spending a lot of time on Netflix or something, try to be like, okay, what trainings can I take? Like Joshua Fletcher just released a training that's awesome, and you want to take that. Go check that out. And we're gonna mention that a little bit more. I'll put a link to it in the show notes, or wherever you are finding this. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'll try to put a link to that below. But there's a lot of excellent trainings out there. Figure out what kind of priorities you have, and then go out and build those skills. It's not just about doing training. It's also about practicing it. Go out. If you're going to try to do SEO, go out and try to build some sites. Spend some time. And if you're actually spending time building, and then you can earn that Netflix, and it doesn't have to be in real life.
Like, I want to talk more about that tension relieving concept, David, because it's huge, and it's one of the things that hold tons of people back. It's held me back at times. It's not like, oh, I fixed it, now I'm great, right? It's a real thing in life. It's like a physics concept, right? You got a voltage potential. The smaller that potential is, right, the less power potential you've got, right? The less oomph you've got to actually move something like a motor or a magnet or whatever you want. Like, I don't want to get too into the weeds with like the physics of it, but the larger that tension, right, the larger that tension gap gets, the more power you have. And way too often, people continue to just drop that potential to zero. They eliminate their tension. They want to get, oh, I'm a little jittery, so I'll have a cigarette or a beer or something like that. It takes the tension out, and without that tension, you've got no potential. You've got no potential for action. You've got no power. People who tend to be more successful will not try to maximize that potential, but they won't unnecessarily eliminate it. with substances or with a distraction or with, oh, you know what, I need to go make sure the bed is made, or I need to tidy my, like, oh, now I did something, now I'm a little more relaxed and things are better, right? uh, like this, getting rid of that tension for most people most of the time is undermining your success with the bigger priorities and goals in your life.
Yeah, I agree. It, it it's also, especially if you do that first, if you say I'm going to watch Netflix and then I'm going to do the work,
Yeah.
that's the opposite. What you're doing is that tension is almost like if you think of like a band, or seen those workout machines that are banned, you're removing the power of those bands. So by doing the work first, I find when I'm bad, because I'm not perfect, when I'm bad and I do the tension relieving stuff early in the day, my overall productivity in that day is just way worse, as opposed to I want to do this tension relieving thing. I've earned it. I'm going to get some work done first, and then I'm going to do the tension relieving things. I get like not just a little bit more, probably 5 to 10 times more work done that way. And so that would be my suggestion for you. And I think Fletch brings up a point there about how it like you kind of need having that tension. It's kind of a bit of a power thing. It's something that gives you more energy. So getting rid of the tension isn't necessarily good.
Yeah. It needs to disperse when it needs to disperse on what it needs to disperse onto, right? And you have some control on that, right? You can blast it on Netflix, or by waking up and having a beer because you don't have to go to work, or by listening to some really interesting information and thinking on it with a notebook. And what happens then is that tension builds. Like David
Like the
said, if you
Cubicle
start to
Liberation podcast.
that's exactly right. That's one of the reasons we're doing this, right? And so, I've done that. I've been on vacation, and I woke up and walked in, grabbed a beer, went back, got in bed, and turned on TV. And that day on vacation, the whole day was like, whatever. It was vacation. So I said, it's all right to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Very different than the day that I woke up and I go down to the beach and I'd walk or run for, a mile or two, or, an hour, whatever, and just check things out and let my mind, kind of percolate. There's something about like kind of that active recreation. I haven't put all this together yet. There's something about kind of active recreation and active like thinking, like very directed type thinking on topics that builds that tension. David Mills is someone I've referred to a lot. He's got a whole concept of like building creative tension and being able to kind of come up with those concepts. And there's ways where not dissipating that tension is the exact thing. You need to pay attention to that.
Yeah,
If you're doing it, you can really undermine almost everything. Yeah.
I think not to spend too much time on this point, but I think that like another way of a specific example of that would be sort of like having your back against the wall, and you have to make money. That's not necessarily a bad tension. What that can do is that can zoom, for lack of a zoom you ahead. It can make you work.
We're
Really
plugging
hard.
Zoom here too, right?
Right. It will make you work really, really hard to build something. And then by the time you get out of that hole, you've actually gone way ahead. And that is sort of the tension that we're talking about. Okay, I kind of want to move on here. So really quick on parenting. I won't claim to be an expert here, but I do know I want to acknowledge something that I suspect that a lot of parents are going through. I heard someone say on another podcast, someone who obviously doesn't have kids, that you were saying you're going to write that script or that book and you don't write it now, then you're never going to write it. And that person clearly does not have kids with school age kids. At least for me, my experience with this is that not only are the kids are home and they're doing schoolwork, but the parents have to monitor them, and you can't really bring help into your home if that's what you needed to do. So not just monitor them, but there's a lot of extra work that's having to be done by the parents. And so I don't really have a great solution for that. I'm still kind of figuring it out. But I would just want to acknowledge that that's something that is going to grow hopefully over time, and it can get better. And maybe I need to do more how can I questions on that. Although my wife tends to take care of most of that.
Yeah, there can be a lot more that's going on. then, oh, now I've got all this time because I don't have to go to work, right? What you talked about, like, the lady who says if you don't write a book now, you're never going to. Um, I think I'm fortunate in a couple ways, and this may seem counterintuitive. I have 3 kids that are all in school, okay, and of school age.
Hmm.
I also grew up with my dad attended a one-room schoolhouse, and he and my grandparents did as well in small rural community in Missouri. Um, I was very familiar with the style of teaching that took place in a one-room schoolhouse,
Hmm.
and what that really was is that the teacher does not teach all the students. The teacher is a classroom manager and teaches very specific things a minimum amount of time, and the rest of the time the kids are teaching each other, right?
Really good. Good for the teaching kids and the teach.
Yeah, if you want to figure out if you know something, teach someone else and see if they can do it and get it like that. It's a real test, right? And it stretches your brain in different ways to
Hmm.
understand things differently. It also takes a ton of pressure. Like being a teacher, I understand it's a role, it's a job. I was a teacher for a while. I was a substitute teacher whose my first appointment was someone who went on maternity leave and then did not come back. So I had an entire year with first graders, having never studied education as a topic. It was a little bit wild, but like I've been in classrooms and in formal, settings, and I got a lot out of kind of the framework and the stories that my dad and my grandparents and things would tell me about. These are ways, like in class, that like one of the things that I got was like, hey, don't talk to each other. It's like, oh, I want to facilitate them talking to each other, right? I want them to help each other as long as it's on topic, right? So kind of small group discussions and people teaching things they know to people who don't know those things yet, and then vice versa, can be really helpful.
So what are your
um
kids doing right now?
um right now I think they're all still asleep, but in general I think I know what you're pointing
Yeah,
to.
I did
Yeah,
one
so
right now,
yeah,
and
right this second. Yeah. My oldest daughter is a freshman. Um, I think it was last week, Arizona announced that there would be no, kids would not return to school this school year, right? So this semester is a wash, right?
oh wow, they're not like assigning them work remotely or anything.
Yes. So my oldest daughter is being assigned work remotely. It's through Zoom again. Matea was asking me, that's her name, how Zoom works and stuff like that. I was able to teach her something I know, which is like, if you've got a high school age kid that's asking you something she's interested in, I'm like, dude, I won. This is like
Yeah,
jackpot.
right.
I know this stuff, right? And so, in a way, my kids have become a lot more interested in what I do because that's kind of the way everybody is doing things now.
Yeah.
And I prideful or whatever. Like it's kind of cool. Um, but then the younger 2 kids were in Montessori, so the Montessori system is a lot more dispersed, right? Kind of at your own pace and kind of your own thing. There are some guidelines and some structure, but that's really easy to facilitate at home. You know, we mostly work. I work on my truck. Kids help. They ask me what tools are. Um, we work in the yard. They ask me why we pull certain weeds and why we water other types of things that look the same to them. We get to start talking about distinctions. They spend time on their iPads. There's a lot of really cool, very neat learning apps on iPads that my 2 younger kids use for some of the time. Um, we try to do like a movie or some kind of entertainment, like kind of once a day, where we lay a pallet out on the floor, watch a movie. But like I'm really mindful of that movie and what we choose to watch. Last night we watched Onward, which is kind of a new animated kids movie, and it's like framed up around like Dungeons and Dragons, which I
Oh,
played a
I
ton
watched
of.
that last week, like last weekend.
Yeah. And so I'm geeking out on it, just period. I was like trying not to get my phone and call my brother and my cousin and all of our
Yeah, it was
adventuring
good.
party. Dude, it's a fun movie. And so
Especially for like a
afterward,
dad. It was a very kind of
yeah,
dad oriented
yeah,
movie.
yeah, it was. Oh, I got teared up.
Yeah.
I get my eyes work in a lot of different ways.
Nah.
Um, but um, but I was kind of mindful of, hey, this is an opportunity for me to help my kids understand how I grew up, like what an imagination game is.
Yeah.
Like what I thought it was a real game, like a game, like a real game would be like somehow on iPad or like Mousetrap or something like that. And I was like, oh, it's the most interesting game you can play because you engage your mind, right? Your
Yeah.
mind being kind of the primary place you need that you live your life. You don't really
Yeah.
live it in the outside world. So I just look for opportunities like that to help kids see things that I want them to see. They're important, that are not just I want them to see. I want them to see because they are important.
I guess your situation is maybe probably. I guess I'm guessing it's more like what most people have. For mine, so my kids go to a private school, and I feel like they're trying to justify their paycheck, that like us paying them, and so we're getting a ton of work for a second grader and a fifth grader, tons and tons of work,
Yeah.
and they have to be like online on Zoom at certain times, and then they have to like turn in their work virtually. So there's a ton of work. They can't just like call school like I think a lot of the public schools are doing, and then even some of the public schools I know in my area, they are signing things, but it's a little bit more just like giving them worksheet assignments to turn in, and they can do it whenever they want, which is why I guess it's not that early, that late for your kids. It's 8:30 a.m. where you are, so being still asleep is not that big of a deal.
Yeah, no, I was kind of, they're probably getting up and around. The youngest one usually gets up with me about sunrise. So,
But I like that your idea of like thinking of it like an opportunity of like, okay, well, what can I teach them just kind of like generally about like how I live and like working on the truck or doing gardening or something like that. I think, or and then having unstructured creative time that doesn't involve a screen. I'm a big fan of that. As much as I am a computer geek, I think the screens are it's a whole other thing.
yeah.
But yeah, so I want to move on because we actually want to. I want the meat of this to be about business, but I have one more important thing because humans are social beings.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the social aspect here because when you can't like go out with your friends or whatever. One thing that I gotta give my wife a lot of credit for this. She did a lot of research and she found, so on Steam there are like games. There's something called like Jackbox type games. They're kind of like party games, and you can play them with a bunch of different people. And what we did is we used that with Zoom and with some parents that we know. And after we found, we did a Zoom meeting and we played You Don't Know Jack and stuff like that last Saturday night. And it was actually really fun. And they were like, we should do this normally because you don't have to get a babysitter. This is one of those things that's like changed forever. Maybe we'll do this in the future. Don't have to get a babysitter. So you can do it from the comfort of your own home. If something comes up, you don't have to be like, you didn't miss a whole lot, or you can go take care of something real quick. Like one of the moms, like I had to take care of something. She was gone for 10 minutes. She came back, right? She had to take care of her kids or something. And it just, I found it really fun, and I'm going to do a whole lot more of it. I'm a big fan of like board games and stuff like that. And it's kind of like party games. I find that to be really, really fun. And just kind of, I feel like that's really active recreation, but also it's a priority of mine. I have to kind of work to be social because otherwise I would just sit in front of a computer all day and just ignore most people most of the time. But it's still good. I know it's good for me to be social, and so that's really important. What are you doing to try to be social?
Yeah. I, I kind of have interesting, even like recollections or thoughts about like me, because as I grew up and as I was younger, I felt really quiet, very reserved, very internal. The last you've known me for a while. Like I tend to be the opposite of that. I think it like looks like I am, at least. I really like communicating. I like being close to people. I like learning about people. Um, and so that social aspect is one that I was like, oh, this may change things. Like every day I make it a point to go be social with people, right? And a lot of those places are like Starbucks. I'll go to the bar and just get breakfast, right? And everybody else is having cocktails or whatever. I don't necessarily need to do that, but I can be there and I can kind of have a sense of community, because working online can be isolating. Like
Yes.
unless if you go to the gym at the same time, you start to kind of see the same people. I have a morning routine where I go get breakfast at a corner bar over here that has fantastic food. I kind of have the same, regulars are there and I get to say hello. And so in that way, I had a community here, even though I work online, that immediately went away. Starbucks is locked. Dick's Hideaway locked. I couldn't see those people. And so I was like, well, okay, I know online, right? So Zoom, I do office hours. I do some of these podcasts that I get to talk to people or guests or whatever. But one of the things that happened just a few days ago is a business partner and I were walking another friend of mine who works online, Scott Schaff. You probably know Scott,
Yep.
David. Yeah. So he was kind of asking us some questions about some things that we were doing. And then Josh Beecraft, who was a guest on the Cubicle Liberation podcast, was calling Scott because they were doing a project together. And so he jumped on Zoom. And so then we wound up having, like, I think maybe even had a fifth person on for a while. And we were just hanging out, you know, and it started at like 4 p.m. and we didn't wrap up until like almost 9. And we were just on a Zoom sitting around. We were talking about business and kind of, shooting the shit, so to speak, just conversational. I had a couple beers while I was sitting there talking. And so it became like this like happy hour from the comfort of our home with people that we could kind of pick. You go someplace for a happy hour and there's always that really loud guy at the end of the bar. It's like, I don't want to listen to him. Sometimes it's been me probably, but you know what I mean? It's like, you can kind of be picky and choosy, but still facilitate these same types of, experiences.
Yeah.
And, that's something I as we talked about, I'm like, I'm going to get ready to do some more of those kind of, not Netflix and chill, but like, let's Zoom. Let's do
you mentioned before the podcast, a Zoom happy hour.
A Zoom happy hour. Yeah.
Also, I thought of several ideas, like just try to contact old friends that you haven't talked to forever.
Yeah.
Hop on Zoom with them. Say, hey, we want to have a Zoom call. Some people have asked me for FaceTime. I don't have an Apple device, so can't do FaceTime. And then it's weird because Android has a similar thing where you have to have Android, or it's a lot harder. So the Zoom
more proprietary.
In between. And Zoom can work on desktops, and I think that you can join it on like a phone as well.
You absolutely can, and you can do it through video. But you can also, if you don't even have a smartphone, you can just call in and talk and listen. So,
yeah, that's right.
Like Zoom is accessible to a lot of people. I've been doing accessibility stuff, so I kind of familiar with a lot of different ways to do this. But Zoom is pretty rad.
There's potential opportunity here for kind of a Zoom type competitor. And if I was looking for a business idea, then this might be one, but I'm not really looking for one because I'm still working my current opportunities. I think there's some significant risk here, but maybe like one that like Zoom, I think is built within the context of more for business than it is for like social.
Yeah.
And I feel like there would be kind of like a Zoom social type of like or service that was only for social stuff, built to be able to enable hangouts for 5 hours. And I don't know what features would be different, but I think some of it would be different. So I think that would be really cool. Or just pick up Zoom and try to learn Zoom. It's not expensive. Like the lowest package I think I have had it's $12 or $13, $15 a month.
Well, the lowest one's free, but there's certain limitations on time and things like that. But you can get it with the cheap one. Yeah.
Yeah. You can try it out for free, but there's certain limitations that I'm not like. Yeah, I would probably upgrade if I were you.
Yeah, if you're doing this for business, it's a legitimate business. There's a ton of things you can do with this. Even virtual client meetings. This is one of the things that I've been using Zoom for. Instead of driving to people's office, which sometimes people require, I'm like, hey, do your conference room thing and pull up Zoom and we'll talk. I'll be right there with you. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. So don't forget being social. That's important to your overall happiness. All right, so let's move on. I want to make sure we get some stuff in business here. Now let's talk about the CARES Act because I haven't paid attention to it. It sounds like you have. Can you tell me just like the highlights of what you see? Is it even done? Is it even publicly released?
It's done. The application's been out for a few days now. As I understand it, money will begin hitting accounts today.
Really?
And that is, again, I'm not a tax professional. This is just kind of overall from a layman. But it's something I paid a lot of attention to because it's affecting a lot of businesses. It affects our business, my wife's business. It's like $10,000 for business owners, and this includes sole proprietors. There's money available for employers to continue paying employees, so that will flow. If you don't have a business, it's something that the business owner that is, if they're a small business owner, which you've got to meet certain qualifications to qualify under certain sections. There's different sections, but there's a lot of money that's getting ready to flow into a lot of people's bank accounts. As I understand it, again, beginning today.
So check that out.
Yeah, check it out. You can go to SBA, the Small Business Association, is where the application that I came from.
.gov or .org?
sba.gov. Yeah. And
Gov.
there's a subdomain that you can, maybe I have a link to the application if you're interested in it. It's
So
like,
send me
it's the
that link and I'll
simplest,
put it in the show notes.
I'll do that. It's the simplest government form I have ever filled out in my life.
Wow. And that was
Like,
like, to me, I was like, do I want to fill out a government form for
do I want to have to go,
$2,000? I don't
dude?
want
It's
that.
like pick list and check boxes, David. It's like the easiest thing in the world if you've done at any kind of, yeah. So anyway, it's, uh, so economically speaking, things are getting ready to shift radically, right? And I say radically, going from not being able to have your doors open to getting checks in the mail, right? That's a massive shift for a lot of people. And so kind of the timing with this was one where we wanted to start talking about, okay, so that's one aspect of it, right? There's a whole bunch of other business aspects, but that's one that's like, okay, is the time, like, I'm not going to call people and get new clients. Well, why not? You know,
Yeah.
like,
No, I'm
hey, there's just why not? But now there's like, now there's a reason to call them. Hey, have you filled out your friggin' SBA loan and got
oh yeah,
your $10,000 yet? Because if you have, I've got this other thing that I do that can let you get a $5,000 tax credit, and on and on, whatever your offer might be, right? And so having a reason to talk to people is huge. And this is a reason to talk to people that I'm leveraging, and I think a lot of other people can build advantages based on these opportunities themselves.
Yeah, let's skip ahead. I was going to talk about this later, but I think
Yeah,
it flows well into here. So with regards to I do client SEO. I'm still getting people calling me and still people interested in investing in their business. You mentioned and Fletch has a product. Why don't you just plug that product real quick? Because I think it's directly related to what you're talking about. Something gives you something to talk to them about that's related to the CARES Act.
Yeah, just kind of high level. One of the kind of trends that I've been paying attention to is that that websites, like, you know, all these, every website on the planet has been deemed a place of public accommodation, right? And what does that mean? Well, what it means is that, like, if you go to a restaurant and you see, like, they have, you know, stairs going up to the restaurant, and they also have a ramp going around the side for people who are in wheelchairs to get to the restaurant. That's a legal thing that falls under the Americans with Disabilities Act, right? So what government did, the Department of Justice did, is say, okay, websites are now places of public accommodation and must adhere to, you know, persons with disabilities. And we're going to go off of those guidelines over there. So you guys now have to adhere to that. So anyway, kind of not going through like the full scenario, because of that, all websites need to adhere to this or you can be sued. Right. And those lawsuit numbers are growing exponentially. Like last
How many
year,
lawyers right now are ambulance chasing for ADA websites?
that's what kind of the nature right now. Yeah, if you are in the law in the law field and you're looking to continue doing business, you know, hey, you can sit at home and set this up and facilitate persons that have, you know, seeing, you know, sight disabled, you know, disabilities, or even like motor skills. It really, so there's kind of two sides to it. One is it's the law, you have to do it, or you can get sued, right? It's kind of you want some money or you want the bullet, right? You can get, so I say you want some money. The cool thing about this is that most small businesses actually qualify for a tax credit for it that most people are unaware of. And so that tax credit is one of the things that I'm like, you know, combined with the CARES Act, we can also potentially get you up to $5,000 if you qualify for tax credit to fix your website and make it accessible to another 20% of the population that cannot currently use the website that you've got.
Okay. What's the name of your product?
It's web, so it's pronounced Web Alley. So it's weba11y.net. And web, the 11, there's 11 characters in the word accessibility between the A and the Y. And so it's just a shorter version of the word accessibility.
weba11y.net.
That's correct.
So check that out.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll do is we'll probably do a whole podcast on accessibility.
Cool. Yeah, it's a neat thing that, you know, a lot of people are just not aware of, but it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity, right? You can build advantages.
You have something to talk about. You're calling people up. And if you could just pick up the phone and find a website and pick up the phone. And if they don't have accessibility, you talk. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to help you. And the CARES Act is dumping a bunch of money. Here's a way to get more money. Here's a way to get a tax credit. Here's an opportunity for you to improve your situation, for you and for something you could say to other people. So I'm finding for client SEO. So client SEO has kind of been the core of my business for a very long time. Some people are struggling. They have certain clients, like I know someone who has a massage client who has 100% cancellations, which makes sense. I fortunately haven't had any clients fire me right now. And I think in some industries, they're doing just fine. And some industries can absorb a 2, 3, 4, 5 month bump to their income. Kind of depends on the business. And so I think that overall, for me, SEO, for long term and even for short term, people are still searching the internet with commercial intent. Therefore, SEO is still valuable. Now, the searches have changed. Some of them are different. They're searching different things. So you need to adjust to that. But the gist of it is that, like, people are still, going to the bathroom and toilets and still clogging them. And so they still need plumbers. Maybe there's some plumbing work that's more optional that they're not doing that eventually they'll do, but people are still searching the internet. So I think some sections of my client SEO business have, I would expect to go down, or other people's. Overall, long term, I think it's better off than a lot of businesses because you can still I can do the work from basically wherever I have an internet connection. And then a lot of businesses are doing just fine. A lot of businesses, it's more of an investment anyways. It's not something that they get an immediate return on. And so they're willing to stick to it, at least for now, as long as they have the cash. And then also Fletch's product. That's another thing that you can sell or you can start the conversation with. I do want to point out, I want to talk about how I think we talked about mindset change forever. I think businesses change forever. For example, for my kids, my piano teacher, my kids' piano and violin and ballet teachers, they all are doing virtual lessons. And I could see somebody being like, wow, I like this. This is really profitable. I can have 5 times the number of students, and I can have students in all over the country, all over the world. And so I see some businesses being like, wow, makes me so that I could actually make a lot more money. I could grow my business significantly, and take their lessons learned from here, and they use it to grow their business to something that they before just being brick and mortar. So I see a lot of opportunities like that. I want to point out one more thing. I remember my old job as an engineer. I was in a factory where you kind of had to be in the factory to do your job, but I was one of the few people who worked in that same building who could pretty much do my job mostly from home, but because everyone else had to be in the office, I was basically forced to be there. But I was trying to push for, hey, I can work from home. I think that there's going to be some positions like that where being forced to work from home, being able to work from home, maybe going forward after that, I would have been like, hey, I actually got more done, blah, 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 whatever. So I envision seeing a lot of jobs like that weren't work from home that can become work from home, and it's a win-win. So how do you think businesses change forever?
Yeah. Did I talk, I can't remember if it was before we began recording, we were just kind of setting up, but just like, there's a lot of people in that position who once you get kind of a taste of not being in a cubicle and working from home and understanding those efficiencies and lack of rush hour, and it's not even flexibility, but like, wait, the company saves money. I save money. I save time. Like who loses by it not working the way it used to work?
Yeah.
What David's pointing to, businesses change forever. There are going to be a lot of business owners who have conversations with employees about this very thing. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, you want to keep working from home? That's awesome. Great. Okay, let's just do that. Or do you want a little extra money to work from home? We can save a lot of money. Like when you were talking about like piano teacher who traditionally may have gone around to a whole bunch of different houses and done piano lessons, who realizes now, wait, I don't have to drive. I don't have drive time involved. I don't have fuel involved. My scheduling opens up because I don't have to allow for how much time it takes me to drive here and there. Okay, so now a piano teacher is like, well, okay, so how do I do this? Right? These are people that you could just call and say, hey, you want to work online? This is what I do. Let me help you understand some
Yep.
technology solutions, some ways of marketing yourself that will let you make more money, serve more clients, and kind of everybody wins.
I
And
could
so it's a
see
great time to talk about that stuff.
like I could see a business opportunity for getting clients where you focused on helping businesses set this up, helping
Yeah.
businesses work more remotely, helping helping a brick and mortar business transition to an online business. That could be a pretty big business right then and there. There's a lot of different ways you could do that. You could have pools, or you could provide services. There's a lot of implications from this, short term and long term. So if you're immediately looking to work from home, spend a couple days just really digging in and trying to figure this stuff out, and then call some people up and say, hey, I figured some things out that I think can help you make money. And you better believe that a lot of these companies, especially like they've still got their rent, I presume, like the ballet studio, something like that, there's going to be enough of those people that are going to be willing to listen to you and pay you money if you make them money. They're looking to make money because they're hurting, or they're worried about hurting very soon. So yeah. And actually directly related to that, one part of my business that is definitely, I think it's doing better than ever. And it's just like the possibilities are much even stronger than they were before. And they were already pretty strong, is the info business, which is sort of like Fletch's accessibility. It's an information product, it's a training product, which I recommend you buy a bunch of training products, not just mine and Fletch's, which if they're relevant to you and you're interested in, please buy them when they're available. But I'm not just saying my business, just buy my stuff. I've got all the best stuff, but in general, the search, if you look at Google Trends, I think it's let's see, trends.google.com, and you search for like work from home business.
Yeah.
And you look at, it's like the highest, I think it's the past 5 years. I think hold on, I'm pulling it up. It's substantially higher. It's basically almost double to triple what it was just a few months ago. So there's all these people looking for, okay, I got laid off, or I'm working from home and I really kind of wanted to quit my job anyways. And what can I do that will make me money now, or like as soon as possible, or that if there's another pandemic, what can I do to make money? So
Yeah, those trends are huge, David. That's kind of a fun little resource for people who are at home who may not have ever gone to the Trends website. Like, it's kind of a little bit of a rabbit hole you can kind of follow. That's not like a YouTube rabbit hole where you just kind of being the passive entertainment side of things, but you're actively kind of learning and starting to understand the nature of the information that is on the internet, that you can, like a lot of those things, like, so Trends is that's one of the things I point to when I'm talking to clients about new opportunities. Hey, let's
yeah.
look at this. There's a lot more people starting to look for this. I can help you be in front of those folks, right? And that's the nature of kind of search engine optimization. If you aren't currently doing it, might be something you want to look to add to your business. We can help you do that online now. So, just putting these pieces together, the more experience you have with these tools and familiarity with them, there are a lot of people who just are not aware of them, and being the person who introduces a tool and an opportunity to somebody else, you've got an opportunity to build that relationship and offer a solution to kind of that, building advantages question that we've been kind of framing a lot of this around.
Yeah. And so like what you could do with that is, if there's some information that people are searching for that you have and that you feel you can communicate is valuable, then you could consider trying to sell it. Like, for example, what Fletch and I sell information on, for example, like the client SEO business. I've been doing it for a long time, and there's a lot of money to be made there. And so there's a lot of ways in which I can help people build their own business there. And I just have a lot of experience. If you have experience, it doesn't have to be about making money. It could be about gardening with the truck. All sorts of different ways in which you can go about doing that. So really consider that, because that's an area that I think is going to do really well right now, because I think a lot of people are realizing, hey, instead of just Netflixing, what can I do? I can study up and improve my skills. What areas do I need to improve my skills in? Okay, so really think about what's some information that is thriving right now, and confirm that with Google Trends. Trends, it's just such a really good tool. It's not perfect. It's not going to tell you, give you the whole context. You got to kind of look a little deeper and think about it. That's going to basically tell you, are people actually searching more for this, or are they not? Because some searches are just flat, and surprisingly, and some searches are down that I wouldn't expect, but some of them are just way up. And being able to kind of take notes and think about that and ask those positive questions and really brainstorm on that stuff is going to help you move forward.
Yeah, great resource, David. I'm glad you mentioned that. That was not one that was on the front of my mind, but yep.
Yeah, I've been using it a lot lately.
Yep.
Well, that's all I've got. We touched on a lot of different things, and maybe we'll go down one of these rabbit holes, another one. I know that there's a thing that we want to go to that starts momentarily.
Yeah, it's an online conference, right? David and I are getting ready to attend a conference on our own and continue to learn things and open up new understanding for us as well. So
couldn't do. It was in Phoenix.
Yeah, it was an event that was scheduled to be live. Right. Yeah.
And I've never been to Phoenix, and I was really looking forward to it. So hanging out with Fletch in Phoenix would have been really dope. But next year. So next year. All right. Well, thanks for listening. And Fletch, I appreciate your time today. And I'm excited to keep going and keep building and keep moving forward.
Always great to be on with you, David. I appreciate you as well. And these topics that we're talking about with the COVID, it looks like we got at least another month of things being weird. So I'm sure we'll be talking about issues related to this several more times. So stay tuned.